Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. So we have been talking about scaling and chaos the last few episodes. So every time we try to grow, every time we change, we create chaos. So the solution around that is systems. So let's get into today. What kind of systems do we actually need? Because the reality is there are a lot of systems that need to be laid out. And other reality of that is you can't do it all at the same time. So what do these systems and where should we bucket these systems and how should they look? So if you've heard me speak before, you've probably heard me speak about the 3 roles of a leader. So as a reminder, those roles are creating and sharing a vision, developing your team, and getting results. The issue always comes in that most people stay focused on the third one, the getting results, because that's what gets measured. That's where we can concern ourselves when the money's not coming in. But the problem is that when we just focus on getting results, we miss a huge chunk of it and it becomes that much harder to actually get results. So what do? We have to focus on those other 2 areas first so we can create clarity for ourselves, first of all, but very importantly as well, the team around us so they understand what we're doing, where we're going, and why, and how to do it. And we have to develop them so they can do those things that we want them to do. And when we do those 2 things, getting results becomes more just about that loop of, are we doing it? Great. Are we not doing it? Okay, how do we fix that? How do we make sure we are? And then that kind of bigger loop of resetting the strategy. So it becomes simpler when we think of it in a system format because then we have a start and a finish and something in the middle. So again, with most of this, when people start creating systems, they generally will go to the third one again. So they'll go to like, okay, what are my metrics? What are my dashboards? Am I meeting the profit? Are we meeting the OEE? Are we meeting the sales targets? And so we get all these goals and all these metrics and these beautiful dashboards sometimes that are, sometimes big, huge boards. I remember when I first started in Lean, I was creating all these boards and dashboards and everything else. And it's like, okay, those are great. But again, if we didn't do the first 2 things, then we're missing a point. And most people for development will have annual reviews. Sometimes we don't have those even, but they'll have goals or they'll have annual reviews there to measure development. But there's no system around the development. And sometimes we do strategy sessions, like once a year we'll get together. Sometimes every couple of years we get together and we kind of check in. How are we doing? Where are we going next? So those things are not systems. Those are one-off things. They're like a single point. They are part of a system. But if you're not doing the rest of the system, then it's not going to be as effective. And that's kind of how we get to, people say, oh, you have to do annual reviews to make sure people hit their goals. And it's like, well, I did annual reviews. No one's hitting their goals. That's because there's no system behind it. So if you're not familiar with systems, systems are essentially a series of events or series of activities that link together to create something. So we have tons of systems in our bodies. We have like a respiratory system, and that includes like, this is me talking anatomy. It's not a smart analogy, but like nostrils in the nose, your lungs, the blood comes in and so it interacts with the circulatory system to get the oxygen out of the lungs. So like there's a lot of like interaction between systems. So systems can get complicated. So we need to look at them one at a time and their whole stretch. So in Six Sigma, we talk about SIPOC. So what that is an acronym for suppliers. So like, where do we get the input? The input. Process. This is what process does it go through? The outputs, so like what comes out of it, and then finally the customer, so who gets it. So when we think of all of our systems like this helps us to create something that actually is a closed loop system that has inputs, outputs, and some feedback to them so that we actually get what we want. And that's the key. So what's the risk? Why bother with systems? Like, hey, if we just push harder, we'll do it, right? But pushing harder doesn't always work. Pushing harder makes people disgruntled. Pushing harder makes people work nonstop, have oodles of never-ending meetings that never get anywhere, and take phone calls at their kids' games and, work over their vacations. Like, pushing harder and working more is not the answer. Good, strong systems, well-developed people with a clear focus on the right goals, that's what matters. That's what gets people there. So when we don't do this, we lose our great people. We lose momentum on our goals. We don't get what we want or what we need from our business or from our organization. So we're not going to hit the goals. We're not going to achieve that big dream, that big idea that we wanted, the reason that we have this company or organization. That we're not going to get there if we don't fully utilize the systems. In Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about it's not just about setting goals. It's about the systems around the goals. And these systems are essentially tiny habits that we do a little bit every day and build upon so that we can achieve the big goals. So when we think about systems, we don't have to overcomplicate it. Like, we don't have to do this huge SIPOC thing, although sometimes when we have a lot of things happening, it really does help to break it down like that. So if you're developing something new, it is sometimes just small, tiny habits that you're going to build upon to make it bigger. Okay, so I'm going to lay out kind of the big systems that we need in place, and then I'm going to talk about how do you start? How do you build? What are those small habits where you can start to build upon to have big success, and to do these, to implement this systemic approach to your leadership and to your business so that you don't get overwhelmed and get totally focused and lost in the details of a system and forget to actually go out and make money. Okay. So yes, systems can support you, but if you try to do too much at once, they will distract you from what you need to do. So small, tiny habits, they're amazing. They work. That's how our systems work and how our bodies work. So let's get into like the big picture of what we need, and then we'll break down the where to start. So what do we need? So going back to those roles of a leader, we need to have a system around how we set and how we communicate the vision. Okay, so this vision, yes, we need to actually sit down and do a strategic planning session, but it's more than that. It's not just having one time, once a year, a time that we look at our strategy. I've done it. Lots of companies do it. It feels appropriate, but again, when the system is missing around it, you never achieve it and you just do the same thing next year, and it's just really not worth the paper that it's written on. So when we have this, you want to have a regular cadence for when you're actually looking at this as well through the year. So you not only need to have like the 2-day offsite or whatever it is to develop the strategy, you need to also incorporate into that how it's getting trickled out down to the entire organization, as well as how are you actually making sure it's getting done. So breaking it down into the small, tiny goals or tiny habits or tiny systems that you need to put in place to get it. So what does that look like? So what it would look like is having regular times where you're actually looking at what you're working on, number one. And the number two, more important part I'm not going to say more important, but the part that we miss a lot, how's that? The part that people tend to forget is that it's not a group of like 10 actions you want to get done through the year. It's a very focused, what's the one thing we want to move forward with? So getting that figured out. And like when I say one thing, it's like you can call it quarterly goals. You can call it, or like a quarterly focus is actually a better way to say that, or it could be a 9-month goal, depending on what it is. But you have to have like set timeframes and a very specific outcome at the end of those timeframes, and not 5 outcomes, 1 outcome. Okay, so it's like one system thing that we're focusing on. So in my background, so we would have like new products that were coming in, OEE improvements that needed to get done, and a whole like ERP system time like that was changing over all at the same time, plus implementing a team system that's going on. It's like, well, we can't do all of that at once. We would try. And if you're, a betting person, bet on the fact that it did not work. Okay. So we would try and it never worked because we were trying to spread our resources out between all of those goals, focuses. Focuses is not a word, if you note, because you can't do that. You focus on one. So what you would do is you would pick one of those things. What's the big one? What's the one that's going to have the impact on the rest of them? So if you're looking at all the things that, I put out there, maybe the thing that has to come through first is actually the ERP system, because it's happening whether we want it to or not on this date. So, maybe that's the focus because it has to be. Or maybe we say, okay, well, if we can get this team structure in place first, then things will work better. So maybe it's that one, but it's going to have to be chosen. And so this quarterly offsite, this 2-day time where you're going to take some time together as a team, will help you determine that. And then you have to hold yourself accountable. So part of the system is making sure you have a way to keep that front and center, not get distracted, make sure you're looking at it every single week, every day, and tracking it, making sure it's actually moving, not just getting ignored because everything else is more important. If it's not important enough to be talked about regularly, then it's probably not important enough right now for you. And your motivation to get that goal is not going to happen. So not only do you need to set that goal, the second part of that, communicate the vision part, is actually telling everybody about it. And this is not just a group meeting where you tell everybody about what's going on. This is a structured communication. Yes, it can include a group meeting, right? But it's also about getting it down to the individual level. So what that looks like is that each manager should be talking to each of their teams as a group and individually so that they understand their role in achieving this goal. And they probably should have some kind of a goal around it to help support it. Even if that goal is give your resources to that person who's actually leading that part. Like that is a goal, right? That is something they have to do. Tiny habit, maybe you could call it. So making sure everybody understands their role and how they support the most important thing they're doing right now is part of the system that you're working on, part of the system that needs to happen in order to achieve what you want to achieve. So that is like this set and communicated vision or system, I guess you could say. So what it entails, to kind of break it down, summarize, is regular times where you're setting and deciding on what the most important thing is, and a system around getting that communicated to everybody so that they have their part and their goals within it and keeping it in front of everybody. Okay. The second one, that developing your team system. Again, so much more than an annual review or even quarterly one-on-ones with the manager where you'd look at the goals in the system. Okay. So it's bigger than that. It is actual. So taking the outputs from number one and making it your input to this number two system is what you're doing. Is you're saying, okay, here's your goal that's aligned. Okay, how are you doing with it? So this includes, yes, your annual reviews, but it includes one-on-one meeting time with each individual person. It includes day-to-day observing of behavior and giving feedback. Hey, you're doing it like we said. Great job. That's awesome. Recognition. Or, hey, I observed this happening. What's going on? Giving feedback. So constructive feedback. So it's that, and it's also providing training and development and continued learning for your team members, making sure that it's meeting needs of them and the team and the goals, and providing opportunities for them to try and to use their things that they've learned and keeping that going. So it is a system around that. So what does that look like in real practical things? As I mentioned, one-on-ones, it is regular giving of feedback. So if you're not giving your employee any feedback at all, then you need to check that. You need to start to build a tiny habit for yourself to do it. I'm not going to try to say that you need to give feedback every single day to everybody. But the reality is that you should be giving feedback to everybody. When you really look at it, if you have 7 people that report to you and they're doing something every single day, they're doing several somethings every single day. If you're never providing feedback, whether it's great job feedback or, hey, this could be tweaked feedback, then they're not getting any guidance from you. They're not developing, they're not learning. And I know you might say that sounds like nagging, but people want recognition. They need and they crave recognition. And they also crave feedback on how to get better. Because if you're just wandering blindly down the street and hoping somebody tells you you're going the right direction, eventually you're going to start to lose motivation. And then you're going to lose probably track of the path that you're trying to be on. And you might leave. And you don't want your great employees to leave. You want them to feel like, hey, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm doing something exciting, I'm part of something bigger. And they need me to do my best and they want me to do my best. So it really is about that. I'm not going to say, well, high touch, yes, high touch, but the level that somebody needs. And if you want to learn about what that looks like, I talk a little bit about it in the last episode about how we learn and how that enhances how we lead each person. So where are they in the learning process? I also talk about it in how to delegate, right? I don't know, I think it's last year, sometime in the year before. It's a bit older of an episode, but it's a great one to really kind of understand how those learning phases really help us to give people in each of those phases of learning what they need. So that is the system around number 2. And number 3, get results system. Okay, this one, you probably have some stuff around it. Okay, so it follows in with that feedback portion from the previous one from number 2. But it is your way of checking on the big goals. So you might have a daily stand-up meeting and have some data that you look at there. That's a big part of that. From there, you might have to go and do some problem solving. So it's about that. So it's removing the roadblocks from people's ability to achieve the goals. And it's also continuous improvement. Hey, there's a better way. Let's go get that. Let's go do that better thing. So all of that is not just improving the results, but it's also developing the team as well. So having some systems and structures around that. So what does that look like? It might look like meetings, okay? And it might look like dashboards. But the thing is they should be the meaningful dashboards, the meaningful meetings, the meetings that actually have a purpose and an outcome and results and feedback and actually get something done. So when you're looking at this as an overall, it is about utilizing the time of your time as the leader, as well as the time of your team the most efficiently. And we do that through this systemic approach to leadership. So I just talked about a whole lot of things. And if you try to put them all in place today, tomorrow, or even as your annual goal, it's probably going to feel crazy town and overwhelming, and you're going to not be happy with what I'm telling you to do. Okay. So again, tiny steps. So where do you start? What does this even look like? You start with your leadership. So if you're the top leader, you need to start with you. Because as I've seen in my career several times, both experienced it as an employee, seen it from my own leadership, seen it from watching other people's leadership, when the leader is struggling to communicate the strategy to lead their team well, develop their team well, they're going to struggle to get the results. The team will struggle. The team will start to break down. So hone in your leadership skills first. And that might feel hard, but it's not. You are in charge of the business. And when we want to make something better, when we want to improve, we go much further when we can improve the things we're good at. Okay, so you're running this place, you're running this joint, right? The best thing you can do is hone in your leadership skills so you can run it even better. Hone in how you run the business so you can run it even better. And that is how we get better. Getting training is not failure. Getting training is honing in the skills that you have and making them work better for you so you can do even better. So you can be more efficient, so you can be more productive, and so your team can be more productive and your company can be more productive. So hone in your leadership skills first. So start there. If you've never taken a leadership program or a leadership course, find one. Okay, where could you use a little help? Where could you use a little tweaking? Is it tiny behaviors and do you want some support in that? Is it, I don't give feedback very well, or is it, I don't utilize my time very well and I need to focus in on how do I spend my day? Like, what are those things that you need to work on? So work on yourself. The next thing, after you've worked on yourself, get very clear on the strategy. So not only on like the big picture, super long-term strategy stuff, but also on the what's most important right now. Where are we focused? Where is the time, the energy, and the resources going? I utilize the 6 critical questions from Patrick Lencioni. If you want to read into how to do that, his book, It's Losing the Advantage, explains it super well. It also says work on the team, work on your leadership skills, then do the strategy. So if you don't believe me, somebody else says it too. But start there or reach out to me because I do this with teams and I can help you with it if you'd like. So get very clear on that and get that moving for you. And then the third, I call it building your communication systems, because ultimately leadership and running the business is checking on the results is about great communication systems. I was literally just meeting with a client this morning, and the lack of communication that was happening in her company was so stressful, not just to her, but it was also stressful on the whole company because they were missing huge things and spending money over here as well as over here for the same thing because they weren't communicating well, because they didn't have the systems in place to do it well. So it not only wastes resources to not have your communication systems down, but it also frustrates your great employees and makes it really hard, makes it hard for them, makes it hard for everybody in the system. And it actually does make it hard on the clients because the clients are missing things. They're not getting what they need when they need it, and they're not getting the great results that they're paying you to get. So what does that look like? So it looks like maybe you have to hone in how your meetings are structured. Okay. So getting the right meetings in place. I talked in other sessions about the 4 types of meetings. So, get that structure set up. Get very clear on what you're tracking and what are some lagging and leading metrics that are going to make sure your business is aligned, and get people giving that feedback. And so the feedback can happen ad hoc as it needs to. There's feedback that can happen in one-on-ones and support that can happen in one-on-one meetings, and get your systems kind of in place there. So I really do stress as a leader that your leading happens through meetings. And I know that sounds horrible to say. It's going to happen through meetings because you're leading a whole group of people. If you're the top person in your business, you have a leadership team under you, and each of those people have teams under them. And then potentially you've got teams under there too, right? So this is big. When you get to a certain size, you cannot speak with every single person in the business regularly. So you have to depend on meetings and basically delegate that one-on-one meeting with each of those people if you can't do it yourself. So once you've grown beyond that, and reality is 7 or 8 people is probably the max you can do well. Okay. So think through that. If you can only meet one-on-one with 7 or 8 people, that's even kind of hard sometimes. How many people are you actually leading? How many people are you actually able to meet one-on-one with? Okay. So I suggest building your meeting structure and your meeting systems in this order. So the first one, start with one-on-one meetings. Okay. So they can be 30 minutes, but just time where you can start to check in on the person as a human being, not just an employee, not just check on the goals and that you're meeting the goals, but also how are you doing? How are you feeling about it? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? So start to get to know the person and build trust. When we build trust, we get better results. So start with one-on-one meetings with your team. Next, start to build a weekly tactical meeting. So some kind of a meeting where you're structured, looking at the strategy that you set, and you're making sure you're checking on that most important thing right now, as well as all of your general business stuff. So start meeting on that, and then you talk about what's red, okay, and make a plan around that. Then move into some daily stand-up meetings, okay? So sometimes we start with daily stand-up meetings and we start talking about random stuff and it doesn't actually work for us. So I suggest one-on-ones, then weekly, then daily stand-up, then get your quarterly strategic meetings going, okay? So I do it in that order because it's the one that's going to be, I'm going to say, the least waste, because you're not going to have to redo something later. Okay. So that's the meeting structure. You can run a lot of business from those 4 meetings, 4 types of meetings happening through your system, and do them in that order. Okay. So ultimately, there are lots of systems in your business. So beyond what I just talked about, this is kind of like the leadership system portion of it. There's also obviously business systems. There's, processes for paying people, getting paid, all these things, right? There's systems everywhere. And the more we can understand them and have a clear start, finish, suppliers, customers, sort of concept around them, as well as just making them actually just part of our daily habits, we're going to have stronger systems and we're going to have a stronger business. So keep this in mind, though. You cannot do everything at once. You have to pick one, start somewhere, and just start doing it. Okay. I have talked to you about this order of doing it, like working on the leadership, getting your strategy sorted, and then building that kind of communication system to lead your whole group. This is something that I'm actually rolling out this fall. So if you want support to get all 3 of these systems in, I have the thing for you. So I'd love to chat with you about it and get you started down this path so you can transform from, oh my gosh, I have a lot of stuff going on and no clear system on how to do it, to, okay, I'm working on these systems. I'm leading my team. They know what they need to do, and they know that they're doing it well because I told them, right? So we want to go from chaos to structured leadership. And that's what's going to help you have a life as well as a successful business, and your team members have a successful job and a life as well. So if you are interested in that, please shoot me an email, Kristina@KristinaSchmitt.ca, or you can just jump on my website and get in touch with me right there. Or I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn and Instagram, a little bit on Facebook. Okay, so reach out to me, get some I can give you some information about it. We'll have a chat. We'll talk through what makes sense. Where are you in your business today, and where do you need to go next? And if you know somebody that would benefit from this episode or from having a quick chat with me to figure out where to go next, send them my way. Share this episode with them, like and subscribe to the podcast on wherever you are listening to it today or watching it. And I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.